Drake is trying to project two conflicting images to the public, one a hardened, unshaken figure, and another an artist expressing frustration and seeking sympathy. Meanwhile, the entire OVO camp appears to be unraveling, lashing out at anyone who dares to share even fragments of uncomfortable truth about him. Their responses have reached new lows, marked by desperation and defensiveness. In this analysis, we'll take a closer look at how far things have fallen. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, because what unfolding represents one of the most revealing chapters in the ongoing decline of Drake's dominance. A recent confrontation with Judge Vargas over the misleading narrative Drake tried to craft about how Not Like Us was created, and the message behind it, has exposed just how deteriorated the situation has become. After being dismissed and mocked in both courtrooms and boardrooms, the reaction from industry insiders and legal authorities was unanimous. His claims held no weight. What's most striking is how the series of defeats follows a long trail of previous failures. Even those earlier setbacks, once considered catastrophic, now seem mild compared to disasters he's currently facing. The cycle of collapse keeps repeating, each time more humiliating and damaging than the last, painting the picture of stars struggling to hold on to a fading legacy. This latest chain reaction of setbacks has pushed Drake into completely uncharted territory, a space where his usual tactics no longer work. The calculated confidence, the illusion of a master plan, and the belief that OVO could simply press a button to fix everything, all of it seems to have disappeared. For the first time in his career, the blueprint that once helped him navigate public pressure is failing. Even in the past, when Kendrick Lamar dominated the biggest stages, whether through the global success of the GNX album or his monumental Super Bowl halftime show, Drake always had a countermeasure. He would respond with a new project, a lawsuit, or a perfectly timed release that created the illusion of control. That narrative, however flimsy, kept parts of the audience believing he was still playing chess while everyone else played checkers. But now, that illusion has collapsed. What we're seeing is a level of public vulnerability never before associated with Drake. The man once known for projecting invincibility is now revealing cracks in that image, acknowledging, through both words and actions, that the weight of recent failures is taking a toll. The most revealing part isn't just that he's admitting to having bad days, it's that the entire spectacle feels like an unintentional confession of defeat. For an artist who built his brand on dominance and control, this sudden display of fragility is both surreal and symbolic of how far things have spiraled. What's becoming painfully clear is that the landscape has shifted. This is no longer the image of an unstoppable force in music. It's the portrait of an artist who once commanded every conversation in hip-hop, now appearing directionless and uncertain. No matter how OVO tries to spin the story or how fiercely fans attempt to protect his legacy, it's evident that Drake has reached a crossroads. The carefully constructed image of the global superstar, the relentless hitmaker, the artist always 3 steps ahead, is now showing deep and undeniable fractures. At this point, Drake appears to be stepping back, not only from his rap persona, but also from many of the ambitious plans he once promoted as career-defining moments. Take the Iceman album, for example. It was supposed to reset the narrative, yet now it stands as a symbol of hesitation and lost momentum. Instead of anticipation, there's uncertainty. Instead of calculated silence, there's visible withdrawal. What's most revealing is how publicly this decline is unfolding. In the past, Drake controlled the conversation through music, headlines, or bold moves. Now, the only glimpses we see are fragmented responses and subdued statements that hint at doubt and fatigue. The once meticulously crafted strategy has given way to indecision, and the sense that even Drake himself isn't sure how, or if he can reclaim the dominance he once held. This isn't merely a career slowdown. It's the most uncertain and vulnerable chapter of his journey yet. The contrast between Drake's current behavior and the image he once built couldn't be more striking. Instead of delivering powerful statements about his career direction, addressing the lawsuits, or providing a coherent vision for what's next, he's resorting to trivial gestures that border on desperation. The once calculated public persona now seems scattered and unsure, and nowhere is that clearer than in his recent public interactions. Rather than controlling the narrative with confidence, Drake leans heavily on superficial displays, exaggerated birthday shout-outs, and empty affirmations aimed at those who remain loyal. His public display of appreciation towards streamer Aiden Ross, someone he's recently associated with more frequently than many of his industry peers, highlights just how disconnected he's become from serious conversations surrounding his career. Aligning himself so closely with influencers outside of music speaks volumes about his shifting priorities and how his legacy is now perceived. This shift suggests 2 major things. First, Drake appears to be clinging tightly to the few figures still within his circle, perhaps in an effort to preserve a sense of relevance and loyalty. Second, His focus seems to be drifting away from the artistry and competition that once defined him, instead of building momentum for a comeback. These gestures feel like distractions, attempt to fill the silence surrounding his music with noise that lacks real substance. It's a clear indication that the situation goes deeper than just a bad press cycle. What we're witnessing is an identity crisis unfolding in real time. What truly exposes Drake's current mindset isn't just the desperate shout-outs. It's the tone behind them. His recent birthday message to longtime collaborator Boy, Wanda, who has been instrumental to his sound from the very beginning, is one of the clearest signs yet that Drake is struggling to hold himself together. In that message, Drake admitted that he relies on Boy, Wanda's words to stay motivated on days when I am down and out. It's a rare and telling confession, revealing the pressure and doubt weighing on him. Such vulnerability might seem ordinary for most artists, but for someone who built his entire brand on confidence, bravado, and dominance, it signals a deeper collapse. Drake has always presented himself as untouchable, the chart-topping figure who never shows weakness, never admits defeat, and never lets the world see behind the curtain. But with this statement, that carefully maintained image is beginning to unravel. It's not just that he's admitting the low moments, it's that he's doing so in a way that contradicts everything he's projected for more than a decade. The irony is impossible to ignore. This is the same artist who once mocked his rivals for appearing soft, the same figure who thrived on projecting superiority over the rest of the industry. Now, he's leaning on public vulnerability to gain sympathy and keep his loyalists engaged. It feels less like a calculated strategy and more like a plea for validation, a quiet acknowledgement that even he senses the empire he built is slipping away. And when an artist once defined by dominance begins publicly confessing defeat, it's a clear signal that the power dynamics in hip-hop have officially shifted. What's happening now is bigger than a single lawsuit. It's the culmination of years of pressure, humiliation, and decline converging all at once. For the first time in his career, Drake is unable to outrun the backlash. The cultural landscape has shifted against him, and the reality he worked so hard to avoid has finally caught up. Kendrick Lamar didn't just win a battle. He fundamentally reshaped how the public perceives Drake. This is no longer about a single song or a single lawsuit. It's about an empire built on image and control cracking under the weight of truth. The reality now is clear. Drake, once the architect of every move in hip-hop, is reacting to a game he no longer controls. In an effort to rationalize the collapse of his public image, Drake crafted a narrative in which the entire industry was conspiring against him in his version of events. Kendrick Lamar's rise wasn't the result of skill, timing, or cultural momentum. It was a calculated campaign designed to undermine him. Whether Drake truly believed this or simply needed something to hold on to remains unclear, but that belief became the foundation of his lawsuit. It was a legal embodiment of the victim complex he had been nurturing ever since Not Like Us changed the landscape. From the moment that record dropped, Drake convinced himself, and those still loyal to him, that the deck was stacked against him. He clung to the notion that Kendrick's success was manufactured and that a system was deliberately working to dethrone him. This framing allowed him to justify every misstep, underwhelming release, and public embarrassment as part of a grand conspiracy rather than a reflection of his own decline. It was a narrative built to preserve his ego and deflect accountability. But that narrative crumbled in court. Judge Vargas didn't just dismiss Drake's lawsuit. They dismantled the very foundation of his argument. In a decisive ruling, the judge emphasized that rap battles, diss tracks, and lyrical warfare are integral parts of hip-hop culture. Kendrick's record, they stated, was an artistic response, not a legal violation. Drake's attempt to weaponize the legal system to rewrite the rules of the culture was not only rejected, but mocked for how fundamentally it misunderstood the art form. This was more than a courtroom loss. It was a moment that stripped away the illusion Drake had been hiding behind for over a year. With the lawsuit thrown out, there was nothing left for him to blame but himself. The excuses, the conspiracy theories, and the inflated sense of persecution all collapsed under the weight of reality. And in that reality, Drake isn't a victim of a plot. He's the architect of his own downfall. Now, he stands as one of modern music's most significant cautionary tales, a superstar who, instead of evolving, chose denial, deflection, and legal theatrics. The result is a losing streak, not only unprecedented in hip-hop, but also redefining how a fall from grace unfolds in the public eye. Drake's downfall didn't come from a single defeat. It's been a slow-motion collapse. One mistake has compounded the next, with each decision eroding whatever remained of his cultural influence. Had the story ended after Not Like Us, with Drake accepting the loss, regrouping, and moving forward, the narrative might have looked entirely different. But instead of facing reality, he doubled down, stacking one miscalculated move atop another until his reputation was buried beneath them. From courtroom theatrics to performative social media stunts, Drake has clung to a false sense of control, surrounding himself with a shrinking circle of enablers while desperately trying to sustain the illusion of relevance. His recent attempts to display camaraderie, sharing lighthearted posts, forcing public displays of friendship, and aligning himself with online personalities, feel less like confidence and more like survival. Drake no longer projects dominance. Instead, his actions now feel like hollow gestures meant to distract from the obvious. The once untouchable figure is struggling to hold on. What's most revealing is how drastically his tone and behavior have shifted. The bravado that once defined his persona, the calculated confidence and strategic arrogance, has given way to something resembling resignation. The fiery defiance that once fueled him has dulled into a tired acceptance of defeat. His unshakable belief that he was always right is now colliding with the harsh reality of being wrong. Even his recent public admissions, vague acknowledgments of sadness and frustration, stand in stark contrast to the detached, above-it-all image he built his empire on. This evolution feels surreal because it's something few could have predicted. Drake was supposed to be untouchable, too big to fail, too deeply entrenched in mainstream success to ever be forced into humility. And yet, here he is, stripped of his invincibility, humbled by a series of self-inflicted blows, and unable to hide the cracks forming beneath the surface. For the first time in his career, it seems he might actually be considering retreat, conceding ground he once fought so hard to control. The question now isn't whether Drake can reclaim his dominance. It's whether he even has the will to try. Because if this pattern continues, his legacy won't just be defined by a legendary run at the top. It will also be remembered as one of the most dramatic and public unraveling in hip-hop history. The fallout from this lawsuit runs far deeper than anyone anticipated. It's not just a legal defeat. It's a seismic shift in Drake's standing across the industry. From major label executives to hip-hop insiders, the consensus is clearer than ever. Things have never looked as bleak for one of rap's most dominant figures. The public unraveling of his confidence, credibility, and even his cultural influence suggests this may only be the beginning of an even steeper decline. What's especially telling is how quickly the tide has turned. Just a few months ago, no one could have imagined Drake's carefully curated empire showing cracks this deep. Yet here we are, with the lawsuit dismissed, his credibility questioned, and his influence shrinking. Drake now stands at a crossroads unlike any other point in his career. The humiliation he's faced, not just from Kendrick Lamar, but from the judicial system itself, has stripped away the invincible image he once projected, exposing how vulnerable his position truly is. This moment serves as a powerful reminder of how quickly power can shift in the music industry. No amount of strategic branding, streaming dominance, or cultural influence can shield an artist from the consequences of arrogance and miscalculation. Drake's downfall proves that even the biggest names can find themselves isolated and struggling when the world decides to move on. And if this trajectory continues, this may very well become the lowest chapter in a story once defined by near uninterrupted success. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for supporting and following along with this deep dive. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our future breakdowns. And before you go, check out the video on your screen right now, where we explore how Drake was essentially banned from hip-hop by nearly every major voice in culture. Trust us, you're going to want to see what happens next.